Hi everyone, welcome to the second week, and I'm hoping that we can have a good chat today about general pathology and how I use it in my clinic, and how we can easily decipher the information for ourselves and how we can easily decipher the information for our clients as well. So that makes it easier for them to be able to understand and take control of their own health and control of their own numbers. So if you're new to the series, this is a webinar series aimed at nutrition and naturopathic kind of practitioners, and so we want to make sure that everybody is on board with pathology and how to feel comfortable and confident using it in clinic, and how easy it is to use in clinic, and it's a great tool to be able to make our jobs a little bit easier. My background's in medical science and pathology for about a decade, and I'm so used to reading pathology results for my clients that I just thought I'd share it. It's really, really simple, and it's a really empowering tool to be able to give somebody that information and then take it on board and utilize it for themselves. So I'm just going to flick over to our other screen so I can share with you 4 case studies today. With general pathology as their core, and it's really interesting because as naturopaths we generally see the types of people who either have those vague kind of grey zone type of thing. So there's the white zone where everybody's just hunky-dory and everything's fine with them, that they are healthy and well and they don't need to see us. Then there's this whole grey zone of all these symptoms of yuckiness and fatigue and weight gain and brain fog, can't concentrate, whole bunch of black kind of stuff. And then there's the black zone where they actually have to go and either go to hospital or go and see a general practitioner to make sure that there's nothing pathologically wrong. So we generally see the people in the grey zone, or we get to a point where people have been in the grey zone for so long, but the pathology itself doesn't show the actual, it doesn't match the symptomology, so the doctors can't help either. So we're really lucky in that kind of area that if we can see what's actually happening with a pattern there, then we're able to give them a really valuable kind of piece of information, and we can support that with nutrients and herbs as well to optimize their health. So I'm just going to share with you a little, let's hope it works. Computer's going on a little slow side of things today. Share with you a little PowerPoint. So this is 4 case studies using general pathology in my naturopathic clinic. This is my clinic, Inspirational Health. You can find it at inspirationalhealth.com.au. You can also find me at tammyguest.com because I'm specifically helping entrepreneurs and adrenal fatiguers. And you can also find me mentoring and teaching business-orientated stuff at inspiremybusiness.com.au. .com. So if you feel like you would like to ask any questions, pop them in the little box and I will endeavour to answer any of your questions as well. So case one, he's an amazing 62-year-old man who is really excited about looking after his health, and he comes in. These are all my clients that I've had, and some of them I've seen recently. So he comes in and he's really empowered by his numbers. He loves to know new things about health, and he always loves to know how he can optimize what's actually happening, because he thinks at 62 that it's all downhill from here because all of his friends are going downhill. So when I first saw him, he was suffering a bit from fatigue and he hadn't quite gotten onto everything. That was back in 2012. And we got his doctor to do a gamut of tests, and what we found was his ability to hold on to iron, which is up in the iron studies area, ferritin, was hampered. Now, by itself, a number like 23 for ferritin obviously is out of range, but the doctor didn't particularly mind about that. And his TSH, just down there, is 0.52, and again, it's within range, so the doctor didn't mind about that. His vitamin D was relatively within range, so that was 66, and doctor didn't mind about that either. So when we're talking about iron studies, I did allude to it on the first webinar, that iron, the easiest way to explain it to clients, and the way I explained it to him, is it's like having cash. So iron is the cash that you wander around with in your wallet. And unfortunately, the first time round, he didn't get that tested. But second time round, you want about 20 bucks in your wallet most of the time. So if you've got a $20 note, you can pretty much do a fair amount of stuff without having to go to the bank. And at $14.30, then we're running a little low on cash, but it's not to the detriment of us. It's not like we're in the coin zone of less than $5, but it's not optimum either. Then we've got transferrin, and transferrin is like having your cash card. So it's like having your EFTPOS card, and you go to the bank and you transfer that savings with that. So his transferrin, or his cash card, was working perfectly. It wasn't being overused, and it's functioning quite well. Next is his ferritin, and ferritin is your storage of iron, essentially. So it's your savings account. So if you're going and wandering around with $14 and you go and do a really big walk, or you go and do something that's quite stressful, that's going to take up a whole bunch of your iron is there to hold on to oxygen. So if you're doing anything that increases your need for oxygen, then you're going to utilize that cash store of iron. So what you need to do is then go to the savings account and grab some more cash. And if that's in the case of his ferritin the first time round, if he took a $20 note out, he would only be left with $3 in his savings account. And again, the same thing happened most recently because he didn't take his iron supplement because he thought he had enough. And his ferritin is down at 23. Again, if you've got any questions while I'm talking, feel free to pop them in the chat box to the right. So what's happening here is he's wandering around with all this cash, utilizing up short periods, short amounts of it, and then trying to go in to get the savings out, and he's having some problems. So then what happens is this wonderful number, saturation. So this is transferrin saturation. So the saturation means how much your cells are actually full and how satisfied they are with the amount of iron that they have available. So his saturation point is 22, and you can see, well, if you've got your computer on nice and large, you'll be able to see that's actually a percentage. And what we do is double it, because you can see the reference range there is supposedly between 10 and 45. So he's about 44% saturated. So he's got the ability to hold on to another 60-odd% worth of iron. So his body actually wants more iron. So yeah, we had a chat the other day, and he's going to bump up his vitamin C intake in particular with his iron-rich foods. He's not a vegetarian, so we're quite lucky in that. So he's going to bump up his meats and eggs and things like that. And he's going to bump up his vitamin C intake while he's doing that through oranges, pineapple, his broccoli and things like that to have concomitantly with it. And he's quite happy with that. So next, his thyroid. The interesting thing was, the first time he came to see me, he was tired and he had a history of IBS. And so the doctors had classified him as IBS. And what they didn't take into account was his thyroid. And as we always do, these are all just a set of numbers, but what you want to do is be very proficient at clinical case taking and take note of everything that appears as that client walks in the door. So for me, he's quite a thin man, and he's, for want of a better term, got boggly eyes. So the better term is exophthalmos, but he has a tendency towards having quite standout eyes, quite a gaunt look, and he has a nervous disposition. He's quite on the go all the time. So I I made sure that he went and asked his doctor to get the TSH done. I actually sent a referral letter and suggested some testing. And he got his TSH done and it came back as 0.52. Doctor says, oh, yep, that's within range, everything's fine. And given his appearance, given his way of being, given his tummy, how hypermetabolic his gastrointestinal system was, we had to make sure that we were checking out any other things that would be affecting it. And ideally, your TSH needs to be somewhere between 1.0 and 2.0. And again, back in the day when I started my pathology, that was the reference range. Now, it's, as you can see, for some companies, somewhere between 0.4 or 0.3 on other companies, up to 4.0 or 5.0. And outside of below 1.0, you're getting hyper types of symptoms mostly. And above 2.0, you're getting hypo types of symptoms, hypothyroid, so slowing of metabolism. So his he was obviously showing signs of that, but because it was within the reference range, doctors wouldn't do anything about it. As you can see, the great thing about getting pathology done as a baseline is you can see the general trend when other things go a bit skew with. So a couple of years later, when he started to show IBS type symptoms again, we got his thyroid function done, and as you can see, it was again, his TSH went quite low. So what he's been recently doing is bringing in some herbs to look after that, as well as some wonderful lifestyle factors, because he's a high cortisol, high stress type of person, and your adrenals talk to your thyroid. So he's been doing a really great job this year of bringing in some of those things, as well as some herbs like lemon balm and some other bits and pieces. So he's quite empowered by that and can see the numbers, and was quite proud to see that it was all working when he came back in the other week. Next is vitamin D. So vitamin D is a precursor. It's actually a hormone. That's why it's 25-hydroxy. OH is a steroid hormone. So vitamin D is used as a precursor to lots of hormones, particularly thyroid. And when it's low, you'll start to notice that thyroid starts to go out as well. And vitamin D ideally needs to be about 100. Some reference ranges show that that there's more of a deficiency. It depends on which laboratory you use. But less than 100 is not optimal for anybody who's over the age of about 50, because you're increasing risks of osteoporosis, you're increasing risks of allergy issues, you're increasing risks of hormonal disruption. There's a whole a gamut of new studies that have come out in the past 5 years on vitamin D and its benefits as a cofactor and a precursor. So optimally, we want vitamin D at about 100. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, so you want to make sure that their fats, their cholesterols, aren't being brought down by things like Lipitor and things like that. Cool. And so the other thing about thyroid is that I've had quite a number of cases where doctors will test the TSH, but generally won't test the antibodies. And to find out why the TSH is out in the first place, you want to make sure that you're doing T3, T4, your thyroid antibodies, your ideally reverse T3, but that's it's not generally done. Your vitamin D, your selenium, and your iodine, they're all, that's the whole thyroid function gamut of testing. And that way you can find out the actual cause of the brain or the hypothalamus telling the thyroid that information, which is the TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. So we got his doctor to get on board with his double checking his antibodies, particularly because he has that kind of exophthalmos appearance. And thankfully, his antibodies are really low, so there's nothing to worry about there. Cool. All right, this is the same guy, and like I said, he's empowered by his numbers, and we got his hematology tested, and he wanted to understand the numbers. So when it comes to hematology is the study of blood cells, so heme being blood, and the top half has to do with your red blood cells, so hemoglobin, red cell count, hematocrit, and all the different sizes of the red cells. And then the bottom half is the white cell count and all the different varieties of white cells. So the top half is all about the red cells, and red cells are like little cars. And this is my analogy, feel free to use it. And people seem to understand it a little bit better and can take control of it a little bit better if they understand it in this kind of way. So red cells are a lot like cars, and those cars are created in your bone marrow, so your bone marrow has to be working properly. And those red cells come out and they go and pick up oxygen from your lungs. So they have to be the right size car to pick up oxygen from your lungs. So if they're a little smart car, they can't pick up very much oxygen. And most of the time, if they're really, really little, they're called microcytes, and they're iron deficient, so they're not going to pick up as much oxygen. So if you've got a whole bunch of little smart cars trying to get down a highway, they're going to bump around trying to hand off all of these little balloons of oxygen wherever they need to be. So as you can see, his hemoglobin is about 147. I wouldn't want a very fit man to go below about 140. He's quite active, and without that, and it reflects on his ferritin as well, he's not going to be able to keep up with the oxygen intake that he needs. His red cell count, so RCC, red cell count, means how many cars he's got on the road, how many of this fleet can carry all of his oxygen for him. And we want that to be about 5, so that's looking good. Then we've got his size of these cars. So you want about a sedan size is how I describe it. But if you've got a smart car, you're not going to get enough. And if you've got some type of minivan or massive truck, then trying to get down a normal road is going to be a problem. And that's going to be a problem to get your oxygen around. So massive truck is these macrocytes, and a macrocyte is something that's going to be missing B12. And so we want to make sure that they're within a certain range, and that's why that range is there. So his mean cell volume is around about right at about 90, and his general trend is that they tend to be a little on the smaller side. And given his ferritin is quite low, then that makes sense that he's on the smaller side, but they're a sedan size. So his ability to get oxygen from his lungs all the way to the small capillary beds, and the capillary beds are like little back roads, to his brain, his fingertips and his toes, and he does have a tendency to have cold hands and feet. It might be hampered by the size of his red blood cells, but they're all within range, and they have a general trend of staying around about the same. We then talk about his white cell count. His white cell count is, and for everybody, his white cells are a representation of his immune system and his immune function, cellular immunity. So there's every different variety of white cell there available for you to look at. Neutrophils are the ones that go around gobbling up bacteria for you. And they're also big garbage disposal systems. So he's on the rise, and about 2 weeks ago, he actually had the starts of a sore throat. So as you can see, his general, his results, most recent results, have a rise of neutrophils, which are the ones that come out and gobble up bacteria as well as debris. And he also had a bump up of his lymphocytes, and lymphocytes are the ones that deal with viruses. I see this all the time using live blood analysis. We tend to have a big overload of these white blood cells that start to pop out just as people are starting to get the subclinical symptoms. So subclinical, so before somebody can notice themselves, or before a doctor, clinician, can notice themselves. And the body's doing this all the time. But the cool thing is we can have these numbers or these little signs and symptoms to keep on top of it so that they don't have to take over. Next one's monocytes, and monocytes are the detective cells. They basically don't kill anything, but they go and tell everybody else, the neutrophils, the lymphocytes and the others, if there's anything about to be gobbled up. We then have eosinophils, and eosinophils are the white blood cells that go around gobbling up either allergies or parasites. So I've got another case study where everything there was completely normal except the eosinophils were up at 1.0 and the doctor said everything was fine. And this client didn't have any allergies whatsoever, no family history of hay fever or anything, and had chronic fatigue-like symptoms, and these eosinophils were skyrocketing. We went and did a CDSA, and she had 2+ dientamoeba and 2+ blastocystis. So we then had to do a parasite protocol. So it's a really good idea. Again, doctors are going to go, oh, well, you know, one aberration isn't a big deal. But if you do a little bit more testing or you question a bit further, you'll start to notice that these are these trends of things. His platelets are great, so we don't have to worry about any clotting issues, particularly for the 60-odd-year-olds that have family histories of heart kind of problems. We want to make sure that they're up to scratch. And ESR is a long-term inflammatory marker. So we want to make sure that that stays nice and low, and you want that to be as small as it possibly can be. ESR and CRP are both used for indicators for inflammation. CRP is the quick reaction of inflammation. ESR is a long-term reaction to inflammation, and we want to make them as low as possible. Okay, next one, biochemistry. So biochemistry is a measure of the output of your liver and the output of your kidneys. So it's got a bit of a misnomer with LFT, liver function test, because it's not actually the function of the liver. It's actually the enzymes that come out the back end of it, which doesn't tell you what's actually happening on the inside of it. So if you want more information about that, next week we're going to talk about FLD, functional liver detoxification profile, which is the functional pathology test version of it, and how much more useful that information is. And we're going to do a CDSA next week as well, so that you can get a bit more information about that. So the top half is all about your kidneys: sodium, potassium, chloride, bicarbonate, urea, creatinine, and glomerular filtration rate. And then the bottom half is about your liver: bilirubin, ALP, AST, ALT, LD, GGT, albumin, and globulin. So the top half is about how our bodies either hold on to water or hold on to salt. So you might remember this from studying days, the salt-saving and water-saving types of analogies. And we want to make sure that your electrolytes, sodium, potassium, and chloride, are working properly, so that all the different channels in our cells are working properly as well. For him, everything's fine, but for some people, particularly my adrenal types, sometimes they start to go off because your adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys, and then they're trying to look after your blood pressure. And sometimes we need to actually add some more salt, like Himalayan rock salt, things like that, just to balance that out. Then we've got urea, your ability to get rid of more protein kind of orientated things. We get rid of creatinine. Creatinine can sometimes be used as an inflammatory, a short-term inflammatory marker as well. And then we've got your LFTs, liver function test. So if you haven't got the spreadsheet yet on how all of these kind of work together and some of the pointers for vitamins and minerals that you might want to look at, I will pop that up on Inspire My Business, but it is available in the Naturopathic Practitioners Network in the files section. So yes, LFTs. So LFTs is your ability to break down, it's your ability of your hepatocytes to break down and enzymatically cleave protein, fats, and these are the enzymes that we're measuring to do that, as well as some other toxins. So GGT in particular is one of the standout ones that generally goes up, because most people who are having a drink, their GGT will go up. It's an enzyme that breaks down that enables our body's ability to break down that. AST and ALT are byproducts of protein breakdown, and so sometimes when they pop up, you're going to have a look at total protein to make sure that's okay. Albumin and bilirubin can go off by themselves, and they pertain to different types of genetic conditions. And globulin is a breakdown product of fats. So we need to make sure that they're all working, and if any of those enzymes are slightly out, then we need to ask really good clinical questions about how they might have got that way. And I'll do another case study at the end here on a guy who came with some worries about his liver and what we did about that. Cool. Alrighty. Case 2. Gosh, this is taking a bit longer than I thought. All right. Next, we have, this is a lady who came in with tiredness. So generally, it's those vague kind of symptoms that we get to see, like I was saying at the start, those grey zone types of symptoms, and tiredness and wanting to fall pregnant and wondering why it wasn't working. So again, sent a letter to the doctor, and doctor did all of the testing, which it is unfortunately a little bit of a surprise, because it would be great if we could get all those testings all the time, but it was great that we were able to get all of the testing done. So her hematology, you'll notice that the reference ranges are slightly different because this is a different laboratory, and her hematology, again, top of it is your red cells and what they look like. Her hemoglobin 129, so we have to have a look further in to see if her iron was okay. The amount of little cars getting oxygen around for her is 4.2, which is slightly lower than we talked about with the last guy. So she might be having a bit more of a hard time getting oxygen around, which would make her tired. And then if we go further down, we're looking at her white cell count, and her white cells are slightly raised in the neutrophil, sorry, slightly lower in the neutrophils. This is something I generally see with people who have high cortisol. Cortisol affects the function of the neutrophils as well as the count. And this is just a kind of pointer for lowered immunity, and so we want to kind of see what's actually happening there, asking more questions around how that got to be that way. But she doesn't have parasites, so that's not causing her fatigue. Her ESR is 1, so her inflammation isn't causing her fatigue. Her CRP, you can see there, is another quick inflammatory marker. It's just doing just fine, so it's not her inflammation that's causing this fatigue. And then we go into her biochemistry, so her kidney function and her liver function. So you can see the top half of that, her kidneys are all within the types of ranges that I'd be thinking about. But then if we go a little bit further down, her liver function, some of her liver enzymes are slightly higher. So we need to find out why her AST and her ALT are slightly higher, and that's her ability to break down or over-process proteins. So some of the things that you might want to be thinking about there is different B vitamins, magnesium, and some balances between proteins and enzymes. So then we go on to total protein, and at around 70, you can be pretty happy that people are consuming enough protein. And so she has enough protein, but there's this there's a discrepancy with how that's being processed. Then we go down to cholesterol, and her cholesterol is slightly high. Now, in someone who's trying to fall pregnant, I don't mind if it's nice and high, because cholesterol is actually a precursor to all of your steroidal hormones, including estrogen, progesterone, and all the ones that it needs to take fertility to the next level. So for me, 5.6 isn't a big deal for her cholesterol. She wasn't overweight. She's 30, so she's not overly over that age, and so we had to kind of keep looking. So the next one was, remember I said we needed to check, I'll pop that back, we needed to check because her hemoglobin was looking a little on the dodgy side and her red cell count was slightly lower and her immune system was slightly hampered. So then we look at her iron studies, and she's got $17.90 that she's running around with, and she's got about $39 in savings, but her cash card has been used and used and used and used and used, so her transferrin isn't working properly. So her ability to transfer that ferritin and iron around her body isn't working. Which changes the way that that her ability to move ferritin around is going to change the way that her hormones work as well, which could impact on her fertility and impact on her fatigue patterns as well. Next, her glucose. So glucose needs to be less than 5, although the standard tests say somewhere between 3.5 and 6, which is wow. 5.0 is plenty for glucose, and if it gets higher than that, you want to ask questions around diet and lifestyle, how they're utilising sugars, and make sure that some of those things are looked after. Her thyroid isn't the thing that's causing the problem again. Remember we talked about 1.0 to 2.0, so we want to make sure that it's within that range, and she's got 1.55. Her B12 needs to be about 500, so she'd actually been supplementing with B vitamins. So I always suggest not taking any vitamins and mineral supplements 3 days before getting a test done, because it's actually just measuring the supplement that you've taken. So she was sufficient with her B vitamins at 500, and her red cell folate was over 1,000. So that wasn't the thing that was causing her fatigue either. Then we look at her reproductive hormones, and we want to make sure that she's ovulating, and we want to make sure that depending on the cycle length in the cycle and where it's all sitting, that we're getting nice high amounts, particularly of progesterone, so that we're holding on to everything quite well. And as you can see, her DHEA was dropping off down the bottom, and DHEA is a precursor for testosterone and estrogens. Her estrogen was fine, her FSH and LH showed signs that they were fine as well. Her progesterone was a little on the lowish side, given that she was on day 21. So we want to make sure that they're at their optimum, because it's our job for optimum health, not in the kind of black zone. So we made sure that we changed diet, we changed lifestyle, and we changed herbs to encompass the progesterone there. As I was talking about before, vitamin D is a precursor to all your hormones, and it needs to be about 100. And so as you can see, hers is at 70, so we bumped that up as well. Like I was saying, her cholesterol, we want to make sure that that cholesterol is actually coming from good places, and her ratios between her highly desirable lipoproteins, HDLs, least desirable lipoproteins, that's how I remember it anyway, HDL, LDL, highly desirable, least desirable. We want to make sure that that's within the right ranges and the right ratios, and hers are. Then we checked out what was happening with her androgens, and so as you can see, her sex hormone binding globulin was a little on the high side, so we start to have some issues when it comes to being able to soak up all the androgens, so that in comparison to her female hormones, that we needed to make sure that they were on track. So again, with some herbal supplementation, we're making sure that they came back into where they needed to be. And last one is viral screening. So viral screening is really useful in fatigue patterns in particular. There's a gamut of different viruses. This is just Epstein-Barr virus, but there's also cytomegalovirus, or CMV. There's also glandular fever. There's also Barmer-Forest virus. These are all weird and wacky viruses, and here in Newcastle we've got a bit of an outbreak of influenza B at the moment. These are all weird and wacky viruses that basically, as they hit, your neutrophils go down, your lymphocytes go up, and the lymphocytes become atypical, so they start to include those viral particles inside them. So they have these little inclusion bodies. And the thing is, all those little lymphocytes, they need vitamin C and zinc to work properly. And if you're not having sufficient vitamin C and zinc, which is also used for all of your energy and all of your neurotransmitters, then you're just not going to get your energy back. And so although this is showing that she has a history of Epstein-Barr, but not necessarily a current infection, anyone who's had these types of things, you can see when you look at their lymphocytes that they're still struggling with the inclusion bodies. And so there is a lot of zinc and vitamin C that needs to be maintained for these poor little immune cells to do their job properly. And again, if we're not supplying them, then they're going to rob them from other pathways in your body, and that's not going to set up the optimal system for you to be able to have enough energy. So we looked at that and made sure that was on the go as well. And then we've got ANAs, anti-nuclear antibodies. This is an indicator of autoimmunity. And thankfully, hers wasn't detected as an autoimmune disorder. So the fantastic thing about having all these numbers is being able to go, okay, it's not B vitamins, it's iron. If it's not iron, then it's then it's viral. Is it current viral or is it past viral? No, and then asking the right questions, or asking really good clinical case-taking questions sets you up for an ability to really get a full picture of what's going on. And if you're getting these baseline done now, then in a couple of months' time, when you have balanced everything out, you can go and get another testing done that you can see the difference, and they can see the difference, and they can see all this wonderful work that they've been doing, and their body getting back on track isn't just in their head, it's those actual numbers there. Alrighty, now questions. I'm being a little bit slack. Let's have a look. Have you found a link between serum levels? Free copper and ferritin levels. Yes. Yes, definitely. But to get this, so the question is, have you found a link between ceruloplasmin levels, free copper, and ferritin levels? Yes, there is, but to get the testing done in the first place is really quite difficult. It's not something that you're going to generally get done through a doctor in particular, unless you've got some really obvious signs of that copper toxicity or the hormones going out of balance. So getting the functional testing done is a lot easier. But yeah, to get a whole case with that is quite difficult. Good question, Angie. Alrighty. Back to here, rightio. So case number 3. Case number 3 again is clinical notes were tiredness and query goiter. So this lady came in with a throat thing. So she came in and she couldn't clear her throat. Postnasal drip style symptoms, and she had fatigue, long-term fatigue, and the doctor was trying to exclude chronic fatigue. So what we did was, again, we talked about viruses, and they checked Ross River. Of course, the thing about pathology is if you're only checking Ross River, then you're only checking Ross River. You're not checking Epstein-Barr, you're not checking glandular fever, you're not checking cytomegalovirus, and it could be one of those. So you have to go with what you've got. She didn't show Ross River. The thing is, on her hemaview, we did see inclusion bodies in an atypical lymphocytes, which shows that there is a history of viral, but you can't necessarily tell which one it is. Again, then we go to hematology, top section red cells, or little cars that take around oxygen, and bottom section immunity. Red cells looked relatively okay, hemoglobin a little bit low for my liking, but doctors and within a reference range seems okay. And white cell count is, as you can see, on the drop at the beginning. So the neutrophils are dropping off. Neutrophils drop off long-term stress, long-term physical stress, emotional stress, mental stress, long-term cortisol issues, they'll tend to drop off. And then we want to see if any of the others are up, and that's why the neutrophils are dropping off. So there isn't. Lymphocytes aren't up for any viral reasons. We don't have any detective cells going around checking out what's going on. We don't have any parasitic or allergy-orientated white blood cells having a reaction there. Her ESR is 7, which in my mind personally is something a little higher than usual. So her history of inflammation is a little higher. And her CRP, her instant inflammation, isn't terribly high at 0.9. So then where is this fatigue coming from? Is it the goiter? If we go down to thyroid function, the doctor said everything is fine, because between 0.4 and 3.5, everything is fine. But the thing is there, 2.3 is out of the 1.0 to 2.0 kind of range, and I see this a lot. If you're getting over that 2.0 type of mark, ideally you do the other testing to find out why it's getting that way, but you're definitely getting into grey zone area there. So fatigue, can't concentrate, inability to focus, especially in the afternoon. Metabolism slowing kind of problems, inability to lose weight, that kind of stuff. And she had all of that. So we did some more testing, which I'll follow through with next week, to make sure that you guys have the whole pattern on her thyroid. But this is a case where that by itself as a number says that everything's fine, but her whole presentation was entirely different. So glucose, you want to make sure that there isn't any pre-diabetes, again, not higher than 5.0, and so that's fine. And why else would she be tired? Maybe it's her iron. So her iron, she's wandering around with $17.10 in her wallet, and her cash card is working fine, and her savings is actually $145, which is awesome. So her fatigue definitely isn't from iron. So where else could this fatigue be coming from? And if we go up to her biochemistry, like I've said before, the top half is your kidneys and the bottom half is your liver. And if we have a look at her kidney function, most of that's okay. Her sodium, for my liking, is a little on the low side. I want it to be just a little bit higher. So I'd be talking to her about a dash of Himalayan rock salt, just to make sure that that's not changing her blood pressure and her cortisol. And the bottom half is her liver function. And as you can see, her total protein, her ability to store protein within her serum, which is what this test is, how much serum protein there is and how much enzymes are available in her serum to spare. As you can see, it's 66. So she's protein deficient, not iron deficient, not these other things that we might have been thinking about. Protein. She's not consuming enough protein. And then on questioning, we can find out that she is actually consuming a lot less protein than usual, although if you look at her clinical signs, things like her nails and her hair, she's actually not absorbing the protein that she is having, the little protein that she is having. So ramping that up, making sure that that's working is one of the big things there. And checking a little bit further into her thyroid to make sure that that wasn't, that isn't going on the up, 2.3, for any particular reason. Her B12, so if it's not iron, then we want to check B12 when it comes to fatigue, and B12 needs to be about 500, and at 376, the doctors are saying everything's fine, but she's experiencing brain fog, can't concentrate, slight differences in the way that she is reacting to things as well. So we had a big chat about B12 and how that works. And again, 1 in 3 women in Australia are vitamin D deficient, and in my terms, deficiency is less than 100. And if we want to make sure that hormones are working properly and we're decreasing risk of osteoporosis, allergies and hormone dysregulation, then we want that vitamin D back up to 100. Vitamin D is fat soluble, so we want to make sure she's got enough fats and she's not on Lipitor. If we go down to her lipids, her cholesterol is looking great, 5.0, and they're in the right ratios with her HDL, highly desirable lipoproteins, and her LDL, least desirable lipoproteins, within a relative range there. So she did get her Epstein-Barr detected, and it shows that she has a history of Epstein-Barr virus. So again, vitamin C and zinc to make sure that she has enough sufficient there for her energy nutrients as well. And ANA not detected. Alrighty, last one. Oh, what have we got here? Do you test CRP and or HS? Yeah, so it depends on the, great question, Sue. Do you test CRP or high sensitive CRP, and can you explain the difference, please? Thanks, Tammy. It's two different machines. There's nothing too fancy about it. One's measuring a larger molecule and one's measuring smaller molecules, but it's a very, very similar kind of process. I would like to say that I can test stuff like that, but I can't. So it just really depends on what the doctors end up testing. So they're both inflammatory markers. They're both telling you the reactive protein. They're both binding to a protein that's on the outside, and one is showing, one's using a different method to pick up more of that protein than usual. So essentially it's going to be more useful, but it depends on which lab you're using, depends on which doctor you're using as to whether or not they're going to be testing one or the other. Next question, Michaela. So the B12 is testing cyano. Yes, it is. You can get activated B12 tested. It costs more, and integrative GPs are quite happy to do that. It's a different test, but yes, it is testing that. Good question. Do you know test? No, I don't, Michaela. I don't know where we would test nalgase or stimulated GC-MAF. No, I don't. Sorry about that. And can I explain the difference between vitamin D levels, 1,25 hydroxy and 25 hydroxy? Yep, so it's very similar to any other hormone, and one's a cheap method and one's a more expensive method. One is thought to be more active and one is thought to be less active. And again, it depends on the machine that the laboratory is using as to which one that they'll test. These are very similar to the progesterone testing that we're used to seeing as well, and estrogen testing that we're used to seeing. Because they're steroidal hormones, they're going to end up with tails on the end of each of the molecules, and one's more expensive and more active, and they're going to attach to it, and one's less expensive and less active, so they're going to attach to that. So the 25 hydroxy is going to be the one that pretty much everybody does because it's a cheaper test to do, and it'll tell you about the free-flowing kind of vitamin D that's available everywhere in their serum. And the other one's a more expensive, more focused kind of test to be able to find out the more active form of the hormone, I believe. I might double check that though, Michaela. So it's been around for a long time, both the testing for different hormones, but the same thing happens with vitamin D. Because it's a hormone derivative, it's not actually a vitamin. They're trying to test which one's available and active and which one's not. Golly, you guys have great questions. All right, last one. Gosh, we're going overtime today. Last one is a 27-year-old bloke, bless him, and he came in thinking there was nothing wrong with what was happening, except the doctor wanted to know why he was feeling fatigued all the time, having time off work. So I should put these in a different. Yes. So what he did was double check if he was actually infective or if there was another problem going on. So he didn't, as you can see with his hemoglobin, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't an iron-related issue or an energy-related issue there. And then his immune system was completely fine. So his cellular immune system, his white cell counts were completely fine, and he didn't seem to have anything happening with his hematology. So these are the types of things that we get all the time. Oh, look, you know, everything's completely normal. But then what happened is we looked further into his liver, and when he first came in September, all his AST, ALT, GGTs were all up. These are all liver enzymes and your ability to break down things like alcohol, fats, other bits and pieces. So if we were just to look at these numbers and go, here's some dodgy liver enzymes, the thing is, if they're dodgy liver enzymes, there's got to be a reason why. So without asking any questions, you could assume that he's got high alcohol intake and he's having some issues breaking down proteins, or he's hypermetabolizing proteins, or he's consuming way too much fats for his ability to break them down. And on questioning, you've got to make sure that you're asking the right questions so that you can get the full kind of full look at what's actually going on. So this guy had been in the past eating a typical tradie type of diet with Coke for breakfast, pies for lunch, and single bloke, so he was having pasta for dinner. But that was about 6 months prior, and so he'd done an amazing job of changing all his health around. And one of the reasons he was coming is he'd changed all his health around. He couldn't understand why his enzymes had come back this way. All of these things take some time. They're not instantaneous to shift. But on questioning where he was working, in Newcastle we have a lot of industrial kind of area, where he was working was actually an old chemical site. So we did some more testing and found out where he's working was actually affecting his heavy metal and some other things. And we did a detox with him between that September and October, the 4 weeks, and he changed his contract and started working somewhere else. And as you can see, in October, his AST and ALT came back in and his GGT started to go down. So everything was working there, but we can assume all of these things that are happening for people, but as soon as, we really have to take into account, these are only just numbers. They're a snapshot of what's happening in their serum, which isn't actually inside their cells. And all of these are byproducts of the things that are actually going on for them, and we need to make sure that we're asking all of those clinical questions to make sure that these numbers aren't just numbers by themselves. Lastly, because his ability to break down fats and alcohol and proteins was hampered, we just wanted to make sure that we're checking his fat status as well, and so his cholesterol was in completely normal. So we want to make sure that we're taking in the whole picture. We're not just looking at all the numbers by themselves, and we're still using all that clinical case taking that we're used to, but empowering people with the knowledge that what they're doing is really, really good for them. What they're doing is positive, and creating an opportunity for us to learn and them to learn a way in which to empower them through these numbers, rather than feeling really disempowered and handing over these numbers to somebody else. So, okay, any other questions? So that's all the four cases for general pathology today. And next week we're going to do functional pathology, which is kind of my favourite because it's a lot more useful information. These are things that are actually functionally happening within the cells and a great measure of how these happen, whereas what we talked about today is general pathology. It's what's happening on the outside of the cells, in the serum mostly, and it kind of gives us this, again, snapshot given the person sitting in front of us. We need to ask the right questions. So next week we're going to talk about functional pathology. The two that I'm going to do next week is functional liver detoxification profile, or FLDP, and CDSA, complete digestive stool analysis. So if you want to make sure that you're listening to that, if you signed in for this one, then it'll be fine. I'll put the webinar replay up on Inspire My Business under inspiremybusiness.com under mentoring. I'm going to create a page there so that you can just have all of these available and you can share them with whoever you like. And if you did get something out of today, I'd really, really appreciate you sharing it with other people, because these are all amazing things that we should all know about, and we should all be able to feel empowered by and feel confident doing for our clients. And I'm really glad that you guys are getting a lot out of this, and I'm really excited to share with you the functional pathology stuff next week. So I will speak to you next time. Have an amazing week. And like I said, feel free to share, and I'll see you then.